Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Fall FedEx Fortinet Data Dive Show. Easy enough for you to say. Bear with me. I feel quite a bit disorganized as I've been out of town all day. I just recently got home, but we are going to try to make it through this show for you all as we continue our look at the Fortinet. The usual first event of a new PGA Tour season, but with the schedule changes upcoming and in process on the PGA Tour, kind of in limbo at the moment, but still a PGA Tour event with FedEx Cup points on the line, players playing for their jobs all the same. So we have a lot to dig into. I am quite excited to break down Silverado and Fortinet Championship, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my Twitter or X, Instagram, and Kick. Twitter and Instagram is where I normally post research around the PGA Tour every Monday. Was not able to do that since I was out of town playing a golf scramble, but that research will come out tomorrow as promised. I posted something about 45 minutes ago over on Twitter, but the research will be out tomorrow. So if you would like to see the weekly research that I do for the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site, Twitter or X or Instagram. Twitter is also where I post my weekly betting cards for the PGA Tour. That will be no different. I have not had a chance to look at any player odds since I was up early this morning and leaving, going to that golf scramble, but I have a few players that I have already keyed in on. I'm curious to see what their odds are at the moment. So if you would like to see the weekly wagers that I make on the PGA Tour, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then my Kick channel is also, or the link to my Kick channel is in the description. I've been streaming the Kick. I'm not doing it for this show. I'm doing some testing regarding some video quality, but my Kick channel link is in the description. I've been playing some games. I'm going to continue to do that, and when I finish my testing, I'll probably do some research over there as well. So feel free to join me over on Kick. It's much more laid back, music going in the background and whatnot. And then finally, for social media, Gabe's Twitter is in the description as well. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. And on top of writing that article every Sunday, he provides recent form, course history, statistics in his own way. So if you're interested in seeing a different look at recent form, course history, just maybe another analyst's view, make sure you go give Gabe some support. And if you are a subscriber to that article, which is free, by the way, if you are a subscriber every Wednesday night, him and I are in his Substack chat going to continue the DFS talk after calls on Wednesday evenings. So the only way you're able to join us in his chat if you are a subscriber to that article. So again, go show Gabe some support, subscribe to his article over on Substack, and follow him over on Twitter. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open. I do want to hear from you all. Have you all looked at the odds boards? If so, does anyone stand out to you? How much do you know of Silverado? What do you think plays well there? Do you think Max Homa is the overwhelming favorite in your mind? Have you looked at the pricing for DFS? Anything you want to talk about the Fortinet, or even somewhere else, the Ryder Cup, or maybe you had a very good week one in your fantasy football. If you have success, regardless if it's golf, fantasy football, fantasy baseball, let me know either in chat or reach out to me on social media. Would love to be able to shout out members of the community. So feel free to jump in chat and looking forward to the interaction there. But we are here for the Fortinet. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 FedEx Fall Fortinet Championship. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Monday evening over at Windfinder. And the forecast looks superb. No wind in the forecast at all. Highs in the upper 80s. Just looks like a beautiful week and weekend for golf to start this FedEx Fall portion of the schedule. You will also have to bear with me since I've been out of town all day. I'm not aware of any field changes, but again, I've been pretty unplugged. So if there are any field changes, feel free to jump in chat and correct me with those. But as far as the forecast, we're not going to be looking at anything in terms of wind. And this might change by the time Wednesday night rolls around, but it looks like a fantastic week and weekend for golf. Great scoring conditions. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National. And the players in the field this week for the Fortinet, in the past 36 rounds, our top performers have been Max Homa, Eric Cole, Doug Gim, Stephen Yeager, Dylan Wu, Peter Quest, Andrew Putnam, Ches Reavie, Kevin Streelman, and Cam Davis. Max Homa probably the headliner, the two-time defending champion. Justin Thomas also here. Seth Theegala, Cam Davis. Those are the big four, I would guess, in terms of name recognition, probably the pricing in DraftKings and whatnot. So there's a quick look at some total performance. But I am quite interested in digging into Silverado and the Fortinet in general. So let's go ahead and just do that. Let's go straight into trying to evaluate some metrics and perhaps some filters that we think are going to be prominent at play at Silverado for the Fortinet. So, looking at last year's leaderboard, we'll highlight the top. Oh, look at that. That's top 20. Just extremely convenient for ties. We saw last night, especially in Microsoft Excel, how this was a short game based course. We saw that a little bit graphically. Now, in this top 20, you had the most players that were negative in putting. You had 4 negative in putting, but the highest, or worst, I should say, in terms of putting was a -1. Whereas around the green, you had a -1.6. Off the tee, you had a -1.6. Approach, only a -1 as well. And I thought it was interesting when we went through Microsoft Excel how the top players at the Fortinet have been pretty good with their irons or their strokes gained approach at the Fortinet specifically. But looking here at at last year's leaderboard, a 4.8 leading and off the tee, that's fine. A 12th and a 4th, but not a lot of correlation directly after that, with 2 clunkers of made cuts, middling finish. Our winner was fairly high in terms of off the tee. Approach, again, not too much in terms of correlation. In fact, a little bit less than off the tee, in my mind. Around the green, much more. You do have a miscut here from Ryan Brim, but around Ryan Brim, 6th, 4th, 21st, 36th, top 15, just outside the top 20. Our winner was very high up here, just like an off the tee, 4th, 9th. Around the green is going to be a pretty significant portion, I think, this week at Silverado. It generally is. And then if we look at the putting, of course, Taylor Montgomery had a humongous week last year at the Fortinet, gaining 11 strokes. You don't expect that, but even so, some middling finishes here, a 2nd, a 6th, 9th, 1st. The putting is really going to show itself when we go to Microsoft Excel. But you see in terms of the leaderboard just how much around the green really did matter. Again, I'll sort on that leaderboard. Now, Max Homa, very, very balanced in his win last year. 4-3 and 2 3.5, so very balanced in his win. Danny Willett, a lot in the approach and the putting, but you have some pretty high numbers here in the around the green, high up. Justin Lauer, 3.5 or 3.2, I should say. 5 from Ben On, 5.5, 3.2. Around the green going to be a decent factor. And if we look at 2022 and its strokes gained, again, with Max Homa winning, we'll take a look at the top 15, just convenient for ties here. Again, only 2 players negative in around the green, only 2 players negative in putting, whereas you had 4 players negative in approach. And once again, if we sort on this, 11th, 4th, yes, you do have a miscut from Bill Haas high up in the around the green leaderboard, but 11th, 4th, middling in Matt Kuchar, top 15, just outside the top 20, a 6th, a 2nd, a 6th. Pretty strong correlation here for around the green. Putting in 2022 was the statistic to focus on. You see, and about the top, maybe 12 to 14 players, only 1 player was or had a clunker of a made cut. Everybody else finished inside the top 25 in terms of top putters. So putting is just a big factor. Big factor here at Silverado. And these are bent and Poa Annua greens. So with that, let's go ahead and jump to the player field, or the players in the field this week for the Fortinet. I'm going to bring the timeline all the way back to 2019 because bent and Poa Annua is so rare on the PGA Tour. Silverado is one of 3 courses that feature bent and Poa Annua greens. You have Detroit, which is the host of the Rocket Mortgage. 2 courses that are not consistent on the PGA Tour, but we have seen them recently. Oakdale, the host of the Canadian Open this past summer. You also have Olympia Fields, which was the host of the BMW Championship last month. And then the other 2 regulars on the PGA Tour, of course, Silverado, where we are this week, and TPC River Highlands, the host of the Travelers. So those 5 courses, at least in recent memory, in recent times, comprise this data set for bent and Poa Annua greens. I'm going to go to all rounds here. 52 from Tyler Duncan, that's quite a bit, but majority of the players have no more than 40 into this 36 range, which we would use anyway. So looking at a big picture, historically speaking, all the way back to 2019, our top putters on bent and Poa Annua greens have been Kevin Kisner, Mark Hubbard, Bo Hostler, Bryce Garnett, Sahith Theegala, Justin Lauer, Eric Cole, Zach Blair, Adam Long, and MJ Duffy. So interesting list there. Kevin Kisner, generally a good putter anyway. Mark Hubbard, the same. Bo Hostler, Bryce Garnett, much more of a short game type player. Sahith Theegala really enjoys putting on this surface. So there's a look at our top putters in a more historical view, going all the way back to the beginning of 2019, which is a pretty convenient a timeline anyway, because Detroit Golf Club debuted on the PGA Tour in 2019. Granted, it was in June or July of 2019, but still debuted in 2019. Let's see. Other things we could perhaps look at. I kind of want to keep this filter on for the time being when we go to another tab. So let's go ahead and just kind of do that. It'll feel a little disjointed, but it's more so that I just want to look at this bent and Poa Annua. Let's take a look at fairways and greens. Mostly, I want to look at some scrambling, because I do not think a lot of the players are going to hit very many greens this week. These greens are smaller than the tour average. They also are pretty undulating, sloping. So putting is going to be a big deal, but I think scrambling as well is going to do that, and a part of scrambling is putting. So your top scramblers on bent and Poa annua surfaces going back to 2019: Kevin Kisner, Jonathan Bird, Kevin Streelman, Robbie Shelton, Mac Hughes or Mackenzie Hughes, Zach Blair, Andrew Novak, Alex Noren, Christian Bezuidenhout, and Peter Malnati. Only a couple of players here overlap in terms of the top putting and the top scrambling. However, the number one player is both, or I should say the top player in both categories, scrambling and putting, is the same, Kevin Kisner. I believe Zach Blair was top 10 in both putting and scrambling. Generally speaking, this scrambling gained, these look like more your around the green types, say Kevin Streelman, Mackenzie Hughes, Alex Noren, Christian Bezuidenhout. These players are more known for their around the green game. Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and go back to the strokes gained. The rough here, generally speaking, has been average. And I don't feel comfortable doing too much in terms of a scoring filter. We took a look at this last night, but bear with me. I will bring up the historic conditions again very quickly and get this set for the next year that we want to look at. But the past couple of years, 6 of the 8 rounds have been average, and most of the time the rounds are average. Now in 2021, it was it was an extremely easy tournament. The winner got to -21, which is the lowest it's ever been at Silverado. I don't expect that to happen again this year, although it could with the very, very benign conditions that seem to be in store for Napa at the end of this week. Having said that, I'm still going to go under the assumption or work off of the premise that this is more of an average difficulty type course. You see in 2020, the winds were calm every single round, and it still played to average. So not extremely comfortable looking at an easy to par filter, but that would be the lean or the side of the spectrum I would want to go. We're not going to look at anything with green speeds either. Bent and Poa annua is so uncommon on the PGA Tour. I think it would be too narrow of a sample size. So the only other thing that we can look at, or would be interesting perhaps to look at with this filter, we could maybe look at some around the green on Bent and Poa annua. So your top strokes gained around the green players on Bent and Poa annua surfaces: Chad Ramey, Jonathan Bird, Mackenzie Hughes, Kevin Tway, Ryan Gerard. Very few rounds, so some small sample size issues there. But Ryan Gerard, Aaron Baddeley, Cam Davis, Callum Tarrant, Doug Gim, and Russell Knox. So Mackenzie Hughes has been up there. Of course, he's most known for his short game, so he's going to rise generally when we're talking about short game. Aaron Baddeley, much the same. But Cam Davis, you think about his win at the Rocket Mortgage, a place that has Bent and Poa annua surfaces. He generally likes this surface. So, yeah. Alrighty. With that, I think it's safe to remove those. So, we won't be looking at anything more in terms of Bent and Poa annua. But I did want to hit the scrambling, as that is something that I am thinking about using moving forward in my mixed condition model this week, is to look at some scrambling on Bent and Poa annua along with the putting. But let's go back to these prior leaderboards and figure out some other facets of the game that players need to be good at to excel at Silverado. So again, from last year, highlights top 20. Distance does not matter. It's not going to hurt you. It doesn't prevent you from winning. But the majority of players were negative in terms of distance last year in the top 20, which is very interesting to see considering you look at your past champions. Max Homa is by no means short off the tee. Cameron Champ is a former winner here. Brendan Steele, generally much more off the tee based. Maybe not the longest, but has plenty of length. Stuart Sink, it's been well documented how much length he gained in recent years. So it does not prevent you from winning, but it's not necessary. You see Danny Willett, not extremely long. Brennan Todd is not long off the tee. Tom Hoagie is not long off the tee. Stewart and Kuchar, much the same. So distance isn't mandatory here. You see the good drives gained, only one player negative in terms of good drives gained. So if we sort on that metric, pretty strong correlation, which was something that I casually mentioned last night when we went through Microsoft Excel, that good drives gained might be something. You can't argue the amount of elite correlation up here. It kind of falls off a little bit. You start getting, these clunkers, 55th, 64th, but up here at the top of these good drives gained, top 15, middling from Will Gordon, your winner, third in the category. Ricky Fowler, top 10. Brendan Todd, top 10. Runner-up, top 10. Lots of correlation here in the good drives gained. Again, greens, they're going to be pretty difficult to hit, but there's not a lot to be gained here. It doesn't look like, or at least there wasn't last year, as you can see. Which is interesting to see, considering good drives gained looks like it is a fairly important factor, but the greens don't seem to be. If we look at 2022 and look at fairways and greens, top 15, just due to ties, a little bit more correlation here in distance. Max Homa was more positive in distance. Mito and Maverick McNeely, pretty high. Hideki, Rogers. But again, Scott Stallings, never going to be long. C.T. Pan, not long. Jim Canos, not long off the tee. So not mandatory. Instead, you've got some more correlation in these good drives gained. If we sort on it, a little bit less from last year's, which seems like it's going to be a pretty common theme, I think, with Silverado. It's been pretty volatile. It's been pretty volatile over the years, and we mentioned that last night in the show as well. On this tab, or in this page view, I should say, I guess, for the Fortinet, I think it's probably good drives gained. But with that said, I really don't know what kind of filter I would use on it. As much as this is listed as a short course, the official yardage is 7,123. Take a look at these historic conditions. Fantasy National has had every single round play over 7,200 yards every single round for the past 3 years. So I'm not terribly confident in using the short course filter. I've talked about how I'm not very confident on easy, or using the easy to course, or easy relative to par filter. So with that, I might just go with the default. No filter, just last 36 rounds, good drives gained. So with that being said, our top good drives gained players in the field this week, with no filters in the past 36 rounds, so long as it's been in 2023. Matthew Neesmith, Doug Gim, Doc Redman, Ryan Armour, Brendan Todd, Austin Eckroat, Bryce Garnett, Andrew Putnam, Satoshi Kodaira, and James Hahn. Again, apologies if I've mentioned somebody here that has withdrawn. I've been unplugged today, away from the computer, away from my phone, playing in the golf scramble. So if any of these players have withdrawn, please jump in chat. correct me so that way I myself and the community will have that information. Did not have chance to look at any withdrawals before jumping live. But there's a look at what I am potentially looking at on this page view, the good drives gained along with the scrambling on Bent and Poa-annua, which we looked at a little bit earlier. Let's go ahead and move to the scoring. Birdies and bogeys. You can see Eagles, not really a thing here. There are a few, and it certainly has led to Max Homa's success as he has had a few Eagles here over the years, but not really too much of a factor here. I mean, you see all the zeros. A couple players have an Eagle here and there. If we sort on the scoring, birdies looks like it is very correlating, but that's a pretty darn low number, all things considered. A 4.6, a pretty darn low number, correlating, but not a lot here in terms of the total raw number. If we look at the bogeys avoided, a 2.5 is the leader in terms of bogeys avoided. There are just a lot of pars here at Silverado. There's just a lot of pars. Again, from last year's leaderboard, the bogeys avoided really fall off down here, but it's all negative 0.5s, negative 1/2. We saw this last night. There wasn't a whole lot to be gained in the birdies gained or bogeys avoided. If we look at 2022, much the same in terms of scoring. A few higher numbers here. All of these, 14 of the 15 were positive in terms of birdies gained and bogeys avoided. Birdies gained, we had a few higher numbers here, 8.8s. Again, some elite correlation. Bogeys avoided, 6.8. Again, good correlation, but both years have seen a slight favor to the birdies gained, but it's pretty slight. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not terribly confident at looking at birdies gained, although I do think it is probably the metric to look at on this page view. So moving to the scoring page view in Fantasy National, again with no real comfort of a filter, easy to par, short course, anything like that. Our top birdies gained players in the past 36 rounds: Eric Cole, Scott Piercy, Max Homa, Carson Young, Dylan Wu, Taylor Montgomery, Doug Gim, Nick Hardy, MJ Duffy, and Peter Quest. When I am not very confident in a scoring metric, whether that's birdies or better, birdies, bogeys, I like to look at opportunities. So our top opportunities gained players in the field this week at the Fortinet: Justin Thomas, Ryan Palmer, Eric Cole, Ches Reavie, Ben Martin, Charlie Hoffman, Kevin Roy, Luke List, Doug Gim, and Satoshi Kodaira. So somebody that, a little bit of foreshadowing here, or as I was mentioning, I've keyed in on a few players. Look at somebody like Eric Cole, who has a lot of opportunities, or is rated very well in opportunities, number 1 in birdies gained, and putts well on the surface. That is somebody that you are going to want to look at quite heavily this week, I think, at least early on in our research. But there's a look at the scoring for our scoring page view for the Fortinet. I am quite interested in the proximity, as we saw some pretty big numbers in Microsoft Excel coming in a couple of different ranges, but mostly in the 75 to 125 range. Saw some pretty big numbers, especially from players who have played at an elite level historically at Silverado in these numbers. And it makes sense because the majority of approach shots really do fall between mainly the 100 to 125, although you don't want to ignore the 75 to 100 either. It makes a lot of sense because we have a lot of short short par fours. And these par fives, while they're all attackable, there is the option to play it a little bit more conservatively if a player is very confident with their wedges. So 75 to 125 is the range that I was really, really anxious to look at this evening. And right off the bat, 75 to 100 doesn't look like there's much at all, at least from an initial look. And then you need to look a little bit closer. Look at all these that are zeros. Essentially, they are field average. They are getting rounded to zero. They are just, decimal points, minute decimal points in the negative. So really, in terms of very, very poor performances from 75 to 100, you have Ben On, you have Tagala, Bramlett, Kuchar. Those four, I would say, are pretty poor from 75 to 100, but everybody else is pretty darn close to field average or better. Max Homa wasn't great, at a -8, but again, that's over 4 rounds, and these numbers are going to be pretty small anyway. Now, the 100 to 125, a little bit less so. They are a little bit more all over the place. Justin Lauer was terrible from that range last year. Taylor Montgomery, pretty good. Willett, pretty good. If we sort on these two specific ranges, not a whole lot here in terms of correlation. 100 to 125, not a whole lot either. If we look at 2022 and proximity, looking at the top 15, again, just convenient for ties, much more, a lot better performance even from the eye test in terms of the 75 to 100. Now, yes, Taylor Gooch, very poor from that range that week. John Augustine, much the same. But a -3.3, a 6.7. Not, they're below field average, but they're not terrible. Not terrible. If we sort on it, your winner led in the category. You also had a top 15 very high up here. 2 clunkers have made cuts. No doubts about that. 6th, 6th, 3rd, 6th. Very, very close behind. 75 to 100, I think, is going to be a pretty sneaky, important range this week for the Silverado. 100 to 125, a little bit less so. At least from the previous 2 years of Max Homa's wins. Apologies. You're going to have a lot of ice rattling around. Didn't have a lot of time, so just grabbed a quick water. But yeah, I'm thinking that the 75 to 100 is going to be a pretty interesting range to take a long look at. So, in the field this week, our top performers in the past 36 rounds on approach shots from 75 to 100 yards. Max Homa, number 1. Always good to see your 2-time defending champion. Led in the category in 2022. He's also the number 1 player in 75 to 100. So a lot of things are aligning around this little narrative here of 75 to 100. Max Homa is your number 1 player. Doc Redman, Kevin Streelman, Troy Merritt, Trevor Werblio, Stuart Sink, a former champion of the Fortinet at Silverado, was called the Safeway then, but a former winner at Silverado. Hank Lebiota, Ryan Armour, Brian Gay, Ryan Moore, and Austin Cook. Those are your top 11 in terms of proximities, 75 to 100 yards. Moving to pars 3s, 4s, and 5s, and to be honest with you, I'll go to the par 3s. I don't think they're going to have much of any of a factor. You look at Max Homa. He was negative in them last year, or in 2 years ago, and still won. You sort on it, looks like he was an outlier because there's a lot of correlation here in terms of total par 3s. On the scorecard, we have 3 par 3s that measure 175 to 200 and 1 from 200 to 225. But don't forget, one of these is at 197 or 198, so easily comes into this bucket here. I don't think there would be a range to focus on. I mean, you could argue the 200 to 225 based on 2022's correlation. But looking at last year's par threes, a little bit more correlating than I thought, to be fair. Do have a clunker of a made cut from Troy Merritt, but a 4th, 12th, and a 1st, and a 12th. This is the first year I think that there was a 150 to 175, so I'm not really going to be paying much attention to this range. 4.1 from Chris Stroud, but quickly falls off into the 2s and 1s. 3.6, but quickly falls off. Par 3s will probably have a little bit of some percentage in my mixed condition model, but based on everything that I've seen statistically, in the course breakdown last night, in Microsoft Excel, they haven't really been all that important. So our top par 3 performers in the past 36 rounds in the field for the Fortinet this week: Eric Cole, Andrew Novak, Andrew Putnam, Ches Reavie, Peter Quest, Russell Knox, Max Homa, Nate Lashley, Scott Piercy, and Carson Young. What's really going to be interesting is these par 4s, as the majority of our par 4s measure 400 to 450, but in Microsoft Excel, 350 to 4 also seemed like it had some significant weight to it. And we look at last year's leaderboard, a 14.6 from Danny Willett. Look where the majority of that's coming, 400 to 450. Highlight the top 12 here. 350 to 4 has the more players positive relative to the field in terms of strokes gained. Only a 4.1 lead, so not really all that high. Whereas we had the 8.9, we have a 7.9, a couple of 6.9s. So it looks like the majority of the strokes to be gained is in this 400 to 450. And you see 2nd, 12th, 3rd. Sure, miscut from Stuart Sink, but your winner was very high in the 400 to 450 par 4s last year. If we look at 2022 and the par 4s, I mean, 5 and 5.7, 6.7, 7.7. Big numbers here in this 400 450. Oh yeah, look at this correlation. I mean, yes, Brandon Hagee played the range of par 4s well. It doesn't look like he did a damn thing else the rest of the week. He played that range of par 4s well. 6th, 3rd, 1st, 4th, 6th, 6th, 11th. Even, Charlie Hoffman top 25 2 years ago here at Silverado. So pretty clearly looking like we're going to be focused on the 400 to 450. So our top par 4 performers from 400 to 450 yards the past 36 rounds: Bo Hostler, Stephan Jaeger, Doug Gim, Brendan Todd, Akshay Bhatia, Max Homa, Garrick Higo, Andrew Putnam, Cam Davis, and Cody Gribble. Probably want to put an asterisk next to 3 of these guys: Doug Gim, Max Homa, and Cody Gribble. They are elite to excellent at the 350 to 4 as well, including Max Homa, who's top 10 in both 350 to 4 and 400 to 450. Cody Gribble 12th and 10th. Doug Gim 18th and 3rd. They are very good at the very short par 4s lately on the PGA Tour, so probably want to put a star next to those or consider them pretty heavily wagers, DFS lineups early on in your research this week. And then finally, we'll look at par 5s. I'm going to be honest with you, it's all basically in one range. Three of the 4 par 5s measure 550 to 6. And look here, 3.4 total, 3.7, 4.7. I mean, the highest here is only a 2.7. whereas you have 6.7s and 4.7s, 4.2. A lot in this 550 to 600 range. We go to 2 years ago. Yeah, 5.9 of a total of 6.2. 4.9 of a 6.2. 3.9 of a 5.2. Sort on it. Oh my. First, 16th, second, 22nd. Miscut from Chris Stroud. Third, fourth, 6th, 11th, 16th, 11th, 11th, 16th. Just straight correlation, basically, other than Chris Stroud. So heavy, heavy correlation there. And makes sense. 3 of the 4 par 5s measure to this range. So the top par 5 performers from 550 to 600 yards in the field this week: Ryan Gerard, Adam Long, Stephan Jaeger, Davis Thompson, Dylan Wu, Wesley Bryan, Ben Martin, Akshay Bhatia, Webb Simpson, Carson Young, and Harry Higgs. I do want to take a look at some putting, as it was pretty interesting in Microsoft Excel last night how we looked at the longer putts, 20 to 25 feet, 25 feet plus. The players that have played well here at Silverado generally putt very, very well from that range, which means probably going to have to bring up that other filter. But let's just look at the putting here in general. We'll start with 2 years ago and the top 15. Not a whole lot. Well, maybe 20 to 25 feet. More guys were positive, I suppose. If we sort on it, not really. I don't like seeing a whole lot of miscuts up here. You know, I don't mind one. It can be an outlier, but you should have a lot of miscuts here. 6th, 11th, 2nd, 30th is strong. 25 plus, not really. If we look at last year's leaderboard and putting, not really in the 20 to 25 at all. Maybe 25 plus. Okay, so look at the 25 plus. Those players were really, really good at 25 plus last year. Okay. I do want to take a look at 2021, see if that's perhaps just an outlier. Doesn't look like it from initial view. When you sort on it, though, it kind of loses some correlation. I don't know. I might put a little bit of percent in my mixed condition model, but we're not gonna focus on it this evening. So with that, that's gonna wrap up the Fantasy National portion. Let's look at a couple of different Microsoft Excel files. We'll move to Microsoft Excel. First, let's look at my mixed condition model from last year. Throughout last year, when I looked back at my previous mixed condition models, I really enjoyed that. I felt like I gained some pretty good insights from what I did the previous year, and hopefully you did as well. And we can look at or continue that trend and continue to improve. So last year, results-wise, wasn't all that great, clearly. Granted, now we had some Corn Ferry Tour guys up here that didn't have a lot of stats or any stats, but overall wasn't a great mixed condition model, or at least in results based. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 11 of the top 20 missed the cut. I actually had Max Homa rated fairly low at 45th. He was pretty common, which again, I started incorporating percent owned in my mixed condition model, so I try to get a little bit unique, it looks like. Did have Sahith Theegala, who had a good tournament. Adams Vincent had a good tournament. Wasn't all that popular. But, otherwise, didn't look great by any means. So I had 20% in the 400, 450 par 4s. Again, makes a whole lot of sense. It looked pretty darn important when we went through the prior leaderboards just a little while ago. 15% in the 550 to 600 par 5s. Again, makes a whole lot of sense. That's the range, the only range. I will say it's important, and this is another reason why I like looking at what I did. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Hopefully now the view is corrected. You see results based was pretty darn poor. Pretty darn poor there. A lot of miscuts there. 20% 400 to 450. Again, makes a lot of sense. 15% here. But what I was getting at before I realized that I hadn't changed the page view for you like a dumbass. It looks like I was very, very narrow in my timeline. I only went back to the Memorial, which is roughly the beginning of June. So I was only looking at the past 3 months. Don't know if that has a factor or not, but it's something that we need to consider. Perhaps it was incorrect to only go back to the Memorial. Because I'm pretty much in agreement with these two. Maybe the percentages can change, but using these two as focal points of the mixed condition model makes a lot of sense. Around the green, we've talked about how it's going to be I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. 10% there. 10% putting. I did use bent. Again, thanks to Gabe, who has given me the information for bent and Poa Anna and the courses that have bent and Poa Anna. We are going to be able to narrow in our focus much better this year on the Fortinet. So I did go 10% putting. I think that probably needs to increase. Birdies are better, I looked at. I did look at good drives gained. Okay, I did look at the 100 to 125 proximity. I think that might change to 75 to 100. I did single out the 350 to 4 par 4s. I can see an argument for it, but it definitely wouldn't be 10%. It would be 5%. And strokes gained approach at 5%. How predictive were they? Again, it was not a very good mixed condition model. It wasn't great, but I do want to focus your attention right here. The lower the number, the better. 41.25 is a very damn good predictive number. 48 is pretty darn good as well. So that's why I am of the belief that we're going to really want to focus on putting, focus on around the green. 400 to 450 par 4s weren't great. The par 5s were not predictive at all. Birdies are better gained, not predictive at all. Good drives. This proximity wasn't predictive at all. And strokes gained approach was the worst. Generally, it's the best. So Silverado is quite different in that regard. But this is also leading to why I think, gosh dang it, this is also leading to why I think we need to focus more on the short game this week, considering how predictive the around the green, and especially the putting, were last year. So here's a look at last year's mixed condition model, the metrics that I used, filters. We have a lot to improve on, clearly. It was not a good results-based mixed condition model. So with that, we'll move to the data detail and some of the finer points of Silverado. Last night we took a look at Silverado in terms of against other full field courses. Tonight we're just going to dig straight into the detail, and this is really kind of the best when you look at par 3s, 4s, and 5s to see where a lot of the strokes gained come. But right off the bat, I mean, look how high this putting number is, especially compared to everything else. I mean, that's why I'm going to be really, really hammering, the putting. Even the around the green is higher than off the tee. And the approach, you've got a fairly significant outlier here in 2020. So if you remove that, it drops quite a bit. So going to be focused on the putting, kind of some around the green. I won't ignore approach. Probably have it at 5% like I did last year. Distance, not really a factor. I mean, you see the last time it really even played much of a factor at all was 2018. It's been negative the past 2 years for Max Homa. Not a big deal. No, excuse me, not a big deal. It would look like fairway or good drives gain, excuse me. It would be the metric you want to look at, but this is a pretty low number. This is a pretty low number. I mean, look at the Sanderson Farms where we are in 3 weeks, I believe. Quite a bit higher of a number. Mayakoba, a little further down here, much higher of a number. So, not confident that there's much on this entire page view that we're going to want to look at. Maybe some scrambling. Maybe. We go to birdies and bogeys. Again, I mean, it's been very volatile. Like a 0.83 last year versus a 4.16 2 years ago. It's been very, very volatile. It would be the birdies if we're going to focus on one of the scoring metrics. I don't think we're going to this week. I think it might be more opportunities that I'm wanting to look at. But the real draw of looking at the detail is going into the 3s, 4s, and 5s and seeing if any of the specific ranges really differentiate themselves and make it to where you need to focus on that range. So look at the par 3s. Neither of these are even half of the total par 3s, and they're pretty darn equal. All things considered, they're pretty darn equal. So anything in terms of par 3s probably just comes in terms of strokes gained total par 3s. Moving to the par 4s, this is where it's a little different. You can see just the astronomical amount of influence the 400 and 450 have. It is more than half. In fact, it's looking roughly about 60% of the total strokes gained for all of par 4s. So 400, 450 certainly carrying some weight. 350 to 4, in fact, are carrying a decent amount of weight because this is a low outlier. It doesn't increase it by much, but I can understand why I wanted to separate out the 350 to 4 as well. But definitely a lot of influence in the 400 to 450. And look at the par 5s. 550 to 6 is more than double the importance of the one that's 500 to 550. So all of our focus needs to be in the 550 to 600 par 5s here. All right, with that, that's going to summarize the detail. We're going to take a very quick look at a few of the players that are good at some of these metrics historically here at Silverado. So I'm just going to go straight into the putting. You can argue to look at around the green, but I'm just going to go straight into the putting. So our top putters, the past 5 years at Silverado, you have Taylor Montgomery and his video game numbers from last year. Again, just recognize and understand it's only one event. It was last year, but he gained 11.2. So he clearly liked the greens last year. But elsewhere, Zach Blair has played Fortinet pretty darn well. Average finish of a 30th in 3 tries. Mark Hubbard, another player that really enjoys putting, Benton Poa'ana, has had quite a bit of success here. Malnati not so much, but he's putt well here. Bo Hostler has putt extremely well here. Of course, your 2-time defending champion, Max Homa. Sahith Theegala has performed very, very well here. He has putt well here at Silverado. Mackenzie Hughes, 2 for 3. Nothing inspiring in terms of finish. 2 for 3. So there's a look at your top putters. We're going to go straight over to the par 4s. 400 to 450. Skipping a whole lot here, I know. But we're going to look at the 400 to 450 par 4s. Your top performers on those. Taylor Montgomery, 1 year. Stuart Sink, former champion. Andrew Putnam, 3 for 3 here at Silverado. Matt Kuchar's 2 for 2 in the past 5 years. Aaron Baddeley's 4 for 5. Of course, Max Homa. Brian Stewart's 4 for 5. Average finish of 40th. Pretty decent. Much less so as you get a little bit further down here. But Putnam, Homa, of course. I think I skipped over Brian Stewart, 4 for 5. Decent performances here. Let's look at 550 to 600 par 5s. There they are. So your top 550 to 600 par 5s. Justin Thomas, Max Homa, 2-time champ. See, Tagala played very, very well here. Cameron Percy has played very well here. 4 for 4, average finish of 30th. Scott Harrington, 3 for 3, average finish of 34th. Has played the par 5s well here at Silverado. Gligic, 3 for 4, much less inspiring in terms of his average finish, but 3 for 4. Grayson Sigg, right under him, 2 for 2, average finish of 41st. Not terrible. Last thing I want to look at in terms of performance at Silverado, let's look at 75 to 100 proximity. Who's been the best from that range? Our top performers from 75 to 100, Austin Smotherman, 2 for 2. Will Gordon, 2 for 2. JJ Spawn, 3 for 5. Brian Stewart again. JB Holmes has played fairly well here, 2 for 3. Gligic, Ricky Barnes, 3 for 3. There's Max Homa. Ches Reavie, 4 for 5 here. So there's a few of the players that have performed well at the various metrics that we think are going to be most important this week at Silverado. I'll bring this back to the best average finish. But because I wasn't able to post any research today regarding previous winners or patterns from the Fortinet, I do want to give you a little bit in terms of research. So let's go ahead and take a look at this winner matrix. And what this is, it's gathering winners of the Fortinet or Safeway played at Silverado and their performances at Silverado, only Silverado, leading up to it. So you can see Max Homa had never played it, extremely well, but at least it made the cut. Stuart Sink missed the cut, but he hadn't played it for 3 years. Cameron Champ did top 25. I'm sorry, that's really bothering me. That's these are all in 12 font. Yeah, that's sorry, my OCD's kicking in. Apologies. All right, Cameron Champ top 25, but he had missed the cut before. Kevin Tway, nothing outstanding. What this is showing is that prior performance at the Fortinet really isn't much. You can't ignore it, especially since Homa is a 2-time champion. Steele is a 2-time champion. I mean, he's generally played this event pretty well. But it's not... It's you don't have to have great performances at Silverado to compete. You see a couple of notes here. All of these winners had a top 25 in a full field event within 2 months of the previous tour championship. So that's something to note, that they've been in contention recently on the PGA Tour. And every single champion going back to 2015 has gained from 550 to 600, or gained on those par 5s in their last event. And that's why the 550 to 600 range is pretty darn important. Every single champion going back to 2015 gained their last time out on par 5s 550 to 600. I know it says par 4. I just take that straight from Fantasy National, but these are par 5s, 550 to 600. Every single one of these champions, every single one of the past 8 champions gained from that range. So there's a couple of notes for you regarding the winners of the Fortinet and all that. Be on the lookout for the posted research tomorrow. I will definitely make sure to put that to social media since I was not able to do that today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching and listening, supporting the channel. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, and trying to win a little bit of money in the process. Reminder that I will be live periodically over on Kick, doing some alternate content, gaming and whatnot, but would not mind taking a look at golf statistics or anything else, so long as chat would want to. So make sure you give me a follow over at Kick and be on the lookout for that research tomorrow. Thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers that you've made so far this week for the Fortinet, for all of the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Fortinet. Until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.